What is good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. The Raiders officially won, man. I'm fired up. The Raiders are officially 2-3, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into this game. I have a massive smile on my face, as you guys can tell. What an interesting game, man. Let's talk about this. You know, there are so many moments within this game that I feel like the Raiders lost this game, and it wasn't the defense. The defense had a lights out game. You know, it was really the offense. And more so than the offense, it was like questionable things that Josh McDaniels did. I want to talk about it, you know, because going forward, the Raiders do have an easy schedule. And I think we're going to find out a lot about this team as we kind of go forward. You got the Patriots, the Bears, the Lions, a couple other teams as well that have won, you know, one or two games. So for the Raiders, it shouldn't be all that difficult to get some wins. But it's going to be interesting as hell because, you know, the Bears have kind of started getting better. The Lions are a pretty good football team. The Patriots just got embarrassed, so they're going to look to kind of bounce back. And if the Raiders defense that we just saw against Jordan Love here steps up and shows up next week, we're winning. We're winning more games. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. 13 points. Who would have thought that this defense could hold anyone to 13 points? And you know, the defense is one thing, right? The defense did a really, really solid job. They absolutely stepped up. But the big thing for me was the fact that the offense is still kind of struggling, right? Different moments within this game that I felt like we could have possibly done a little bit more. The Raiders had 2 turnovers in this game prior to the final interception by Amik Robertson. We had 2 turnovers prior to that point, and we only scored 3 points. That's not acceptable, right? The Raiders offense has to do a better job. When the defense gives the Raiders offense the opportunity to possibly do something, the offense has to step up and get it done. You know, I feel like Jimmy G and Devontae Adams really didn't get it going in this game. Only 4 catches for 45 yards. But something tells me Devontae Adams is kind of hurt. Something tells me there's something going on with that shoulder more than we know, right? So it's kind of interesting if you guys think about it in that aspect, because Adams coming back against the Packers, you would have expected him, you know, 10 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns type of game, and he just didn't look all that healthy, you know. So it's going to be interesting as we do go forward. I want to get into some of your guys' comments. I'm fired up, man. I know some people wanted to tank the rest of the season, but, you know, I'm all about winning, man. I'm all about the Raiders possibly getting some more wins and just, you know, see how many games we can rack up and ultimately win. 2-3, we're still in it, right? The season's not over. Honestly, we should have probably won a couple of games that we've lost. The Steelers game, the Chargers game, I think we could have easily won those games had we played a little bit better. And even now, right, like the offense hasn't gotten it going yet. They really haven't figured it out. Josh Jacobs had 20 carries and he only had 69 yards. So there's still a lot of improvements that this offense can continue to make. We finally got Michael Mayer involved. He had 2 catches for 39 yards. But at least he got targeted, right? And at least he has a couple of catches. So to me, I think that's massive. Weezy said Spillane with the 2 interceptions. That's big, man. You know, the first one, I don't know what the hell the quarterback did. That was kind of a lucky interception. But the second one was absolutely skill, right? Marcus Peter did a great job breaking the pass up. And then Robert Spillane had to find the ball in the air, right? The ball pops up. You got to be able to catch it and intercept it. Some linebackers would panic and get scared and not intercept that one. But Spillane ended up intercepting it. So big shout out to him. 2 interceptions, man. That's ridiculous. That's, you know, an absolute great game by Robert Spillane. Very excited that, you know, we heard about all these interceptions that we're getting back in camp, and we're finally getting some more interceptions. You know, this season, the Raiders have had some opportunities. Marcus Peters had a dropped interception. Roger Teamer had an interception that got called back. I believe there was one other interception that may not have counted as well. But looks like the Raiders are kind of getting it going a little bit. So that's all we can hope for, is for the defense just kind of keep the offense in the game. But the offense has to absolutely put the games away. We cannot let these teams stick close to the Raiders. And I'm going to talk to you guys about some specific moments that I think Josh McDaniels has to adjust and get better at. But let's get into some more of these comments. Some of you guys are saying Amik Robertson. Big shout out to him, man. You know, I told you guys earlier, like when preseason was going on, I said, I don't know if we should keep Amik Robertson on the roster. And I'm glad that the Raiders actually did keep him on the roster, because they called for him to step up this game, right? Jacorian Bennett was inactive. And he showed up and he stepped the hell up, right? So you got to give a big shout out to Amik Robertson. JT Douglas, shout out to you for the super chat, said Raiders pass blocking looked atrocious, and I still have zero confidence in Josh McDaniels making decisions. It's crazy because I feel like in the beginning of the game, the Raiders' offensive line was absolutely struggling, and there was a point in which Darren Munford came in and started at right tackle, and we got a lot better from that point forward. I'm not sure if Jermaine Illuminor got hurt. I think the broadcast crew mentioned that Illuminor got hurt and he came out. I wasn't sure if that's exactly what happened. I know we rotate in. I didn't see the injury, but maybe I missed it. But when Munford came in, the offensive line actually got better, right? The offensive line started performing better, in my opinion. Now, I still don't have the confidence in them, right? There was a moment in which Jimmy G did get sacked. I think it was like 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It was actually on Darren Munford. Rashawn Gary ended up getting him. But the offensive line does have to get it right, because I think you guys can agree with me. When the Raiders' offensive line is keeping the quarterback clean and Jimmy G is able to go through his reads, he actually does look a lot better, right? When he's getting sacked and he's getting pressured, you can tell the guy doesn't look good, right? So I think for one thing the Raiders have to do is they got to keep Jimmy Garoppolo clean. And that's going to really start with the right guard and right tackle, right? And specifically the right tackle position has to really anchor down, right? The tackles are so important to be able to anchor down. Michael said, Sanjit, this defense held up and won us the game. The O-line has to improve, maybe call quick development plays as opposed to these long concept plays. I 100% agree with you on that. I feel like the defense 100% won us this game. There's no questions asked. In fact, I think most of us agree Josh McDaniels made the wrong decision to kick the field goal at the end of the game. And that was just one of his many, many, many mistakes within this game. I tweeted this on Twitter. I said, Josh McDaniels either has to call plays full-time or he has to manage the game full-time. He should not do both, right? Because we know head coaches make decisions and we know offensive coordinators call plays, but Josh McDaniels obviously both for the Raiders. I think McDaniels needs to pass one of those duties off to a different coach, because I feel like when it comes to calling plays, when it comes to making decisions, the fact that the clock's going and you have to get the play in and sometimes you can't really think it through, I feel like McDaniels needs to take a step back and let someone else possibly do one or the other. I would love for McDaniels to possibly just continue calling plays and maybe you have someone else step in and manage the game. I honestly feel like, the field goal at the end of the game, it didn't make sense to me. There was, you could have went for it, and it was 4th and 1. You get the first down as opposed to kicking the 52-yard field goal, and we're up by 4. So technically, even if you don't get it, the Packers still have to score a touchdown. I think that was a massive mistake by Josh McDaniels. You got to trust the $125 million offense that you have, right? That high-powered offense, the $60 million that you have in your three starting wide receivers. Get one of those guys the ball or run it to Josh Jacobs, right? But get the first down and win the game, right? Why take the chance that, hey, let's go up by 7 and then give the Packers the football back, right? That didn't make sense to me. I think that was the wrong decision by Josh McDaniels. And I also want to state this, players see those decisions and they think about those moments. They'll go home and they'll think about those moments a little bit. They'll say, why did we not just go for it, right? I think that was the wrong decision on Josh McDaniels. And I think ultimately Patrick Graham and the defense bailed the Raiders out, right? Because based off what the offense did, we should have probably lost this game, right? Let's just be honest. We should have probably lost this game had the defense not bailed us out. Every one of those guys on the defensive side deserves a game ball. And the offensive line does have to continue to improve. One of the things to keep in mind, last year our offensive line wasn't very good at the beginning of the season, but as the season went on, they got better and better and better and better. Larry actually puts a good tweet out, a DM. Larry DM puts out a super chat saying, you cannot start Jermaine Illuminor over Darren Munford again. That's questionable, right? I do agree with what you're saying. And I'll be the first to tell you guys, I think Darren Munford had a really solid game, right? He only had one losing rep that was noticeable, which was the sack. But outside of that, he looked pretty damn good, right? And I say I'm not 100% sure with that because, is Munford going to be able to hold it down, right? And maybe he does, right? And maybe we can roll forward there, Munford, and maybe we should see what he has. But I'm not 100% sure, right? That's something that I'm just not sure with, right? I personally watched and have an opinion of Darren Munford. I've watched this tape. But I do think that he looked pretty good today, and I would like to see what he has. He was a 7th-round pick, so it's not like he was a 1st-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, and it's not like we're 100% relying on this guy to take over at least anytime soon, right? And the hope is he can just continue to develop, and then hopefully one day he does become that starter for the Raiders. But I think it's an interesting thing because I'm not sure if Illuminor got hurt, and I'm sure someone can probably confirm that real quick. I think Illuminor just kind of played bad and poorly, and then Munford, maybe the coaching staff just rolled forward with him. But Munford did also do a really solid job on a couple of the big runs that Jacobs had. So shout out there, Munford, man. The guy definitely had a good game. The trucker said, bro, why do we kick it? Would it have been better if we went for it? Raider Nation for life, 2-3, baby. The defense was balling out. Shout out to you for the super chat. Yeah, man, it's interesting that you say, why do we kick it? Because it wasn't just that one decision where we kicked it, right? There were a couple other impactful things, at least that I thought about. There was a moment early on in the game where the Raiders picked up 9 yards on 1st down. It was 2nd and inches. And the Raiders quarterback sneaked the ball. And that didn't make sense to me either. Why are you quarterback sneaking on 2nd and inches? 2nd and inches means you play action, you throw it deep, right? You take that deep shot. Why quarterback sneaking on 2nd and inches? You could quarterback sneak on 4th and inches. You have 2 free-ass plays. That right there did not make sense to me. And that's the moment of the game that Josh McDaniels is making, in my opinion, is making a terrible job managing, right? It's not 3rd down. It's not 4th down. You don't need to quarterback sneak the football. It doesn't make sense to me why Josh McDaniels called that play within that moment, right? Again, I love the fact that ultimately the Raiders won this game, but I still question Josh McDaniels. And I still question if he has what it takes for the Raiders to win. I didn't agree with the field goal opportunity at the end of the game. I didn't agree with quarterback sneaking it on 2nd and inches. Even after Robert Spillane's first interception, the Raiders ran the football through the middle, picked up like a yard or 2, and then we threw 2 screen passes before kicking the field goal. That didn't make sense to me either. And then right before half, there was like 1 minute and 45 seconds left. Josh McDaniels decided not to call a timeout. We had 2 timeouts. For what reason did he decide not to call it? Like, that part of it didn't make sense either. Like, it makes more sense to save 45 seconds on the clock than to have a timeout, right? Because 45 seconds is like 4 plays that you can possibly run, right? And if you get out of bounds, maybe it's even more. So right before half, the Raiders, that part of it never made sense to me either, right? So Josh McDaniels is making these decisions that I think are going to impact the Raiders someday in the future. Right, we could have easily lost this game, and those decisions could have easily impacted the Raiders in this game. But sometime down the line, I don't know. Josh McDaniels has to do a better job. Again, I would recommend that Josh McDaniels passes off either the decision making or the play calling to somebody else. One or the other. Just pass it off to somebody else, because I think for McDaniels to do both right now just doesn't make sense. I appreciate the super chat as always. JT Douglas said, is Andre James regressing? There was a play early in the game in which Andre James was supposed to cover. Dylan Parham pulled from the left guard spot to the right. Andre James was supposed to cover, and it looked like he slipped and he missed Quay Walker, and Quay Walker blew the entire play up. That's not the only time Andre James has missed a block this season. That's not the only time Andre James got pushed around this season. I don't think Andre James is regressing. I think what's happening is he's never developed. Right? He's never gotten better. He's never taken that step up, right? What Andre James was when he started is still basically what he is today. He just hasn't really gotten better. And I think with the guy like Andre James, he's just not going to get any better than where he is right now, right? Like, he'll get stronger, he'll get more experience. But I think at this point, the Raiders need to look forward to getting, really improving that offensive line and getting those stout guys up front. For the style of football that the Raiders want to play, where they want to run the football, play powerful football, and, really set the tone, they need a good offensive line, and we don't have that right now. Now, I don't think Andre James is the guy you need to replace first. I think you really need to get a good right tackle. To me, guards are easier to find. Centers are easy to find. Tackles is where it's at. And the Raiders almost took a tackle in the draft this past season. Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler thought about trading back with the Cardinals and ultimately taking Anton Harrison at pick 12. I'm sorry, they thought about trading back with the Lions right? Or maybe it was the Cardinals. Maybe the Cardinals wanted to trade up, and they ultimately traded up with the Lions as opposed to the Raiders. And the Raiders thought about jumping back and getting Anton Harrison. So the Raiders almost got themselves a right tackle in the draft this past season. They didn't, right? And they didn't get that right tackle. And basically, we now have Jermaine Luminor there in Munford. We got to fix the offensive line. I think that's very, very clear based off of some of the games that we have seen. I think the Raiders need to get a right tackle first, then get a center, and ultimately then fix that right guard position. I think guards and centers are very easy to find, though. Usually every year in the draft, the best centers are going to go in the second round, right? No center really goes in the first round because centers is just that one position where you only need 32 of them. All right, it's not one of those positions where you need a lot of them. And at this point, there's a lot of centers that you can kind of rotate in and out. There's a lot of guards that are playing center. Right, Landon Dickerson of the Eagles he was a very good center back at Alabama. He ended up playing guard for the Eagles. He's an all-pro guard now for the Eagles. The Eagles also drafted Cam Jurgens. He was a center in college, and he's now their starting right guard, right? So the Eagles have like three starting centers on their offensive line. But I think the Raiders got to fix the offensive line. Appreciate the super chat as always. Untouchable Raiders said a win is a win, but Jordan Love is not a good quarterback. Got outplayed by Ritter and has been struggling badly recently. Let's go Raiders. Offense is bad. We can't make excuses at the end of the day, right? Our offense still sucks, right? And I don't know if I want to use the word sucks because I do think it's gotten better, but it's still not good enough, right? From a points perspective. It almost seems like we'll be in these 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, and then Jimmy G just gets sacked, right? Or, we run the ball and we lose 2 yards, right? Or we run a screen pass and the ball gets knocked incomplete or whatever, right? To me, it almost seems like the Raiders just can't sustain drives at times. And, I don't know about you guys, but I feel anxious every time the Raiders have the football. Like, hey, we're about to throw an interception. We're about to fumble the ball, or Jimmy G's going to get sacked. We're going to go backwards. But I do think that the offense has gotten a little bit better from week 1 to where we're kind of at today. I know from a points per game perspective, it doesn't really translate. And until it translates, we can't really say that it's gotten better, I guess, right? But I think Josh Jacobs has slowly gotten a little bit better, right? He's averaging 3 yards per attempt today, as opposed to in the first 2 weeks, he was averaging like 1.5, 2 yards. Jimmy G, although he did have an interception today, he did have a touchdown. And he also got us down all the way to the 1 yard line in which Josh Jacobs punched the ball in. It might not be good enough, to be honest with you guys, but we did also have one missed field goal, 1 blocked field goal, right? So we also left 6 points out there. We should have had 23 points today. And I think that's an improvement. And I say 23 points because the offense actually got us in position to score 23 points. It's not like, we wouldn't have had 23 points, right? So to me, I think the Raiders offense is improving, but it's still probably not good enough, right? If we were playing the 49ers, if we were playing the Cowboys, if we were playing, whichever other team it is, right? Patrick Mahomes, and I believe we played the Dolphins this year as well. So when we played those teams, our offense can't put up 17 points and expect to win, right? So I agree with what you're saying, Untouchable Raider. I 100% agree with it. The offense has to get better, right? Jordan Love right now, it just doesn't seem like a good quarterback. Although I have faith in Jordan Love. I think he looks pretty good, at least from what I've seen in the past. He just doesn't look good right now. Maybe that's because his left tackle's banged up, his starting running back's banged up, his receivers are all 1st or 2nd year guys. Maybe it's just not where ultimately the Packers want to be, but we'll see what ends up happening with the Packers. I do think they're a better team than what we saw. All right, at least I think that, and I think the Raiders ultimately beat a team that's fairly good, right? You even look at the front 7 of the Packers. Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, Quay Walker, those are all pro or Pro Bowl caliber guys, right? So we'll see as it kind of continues. The Raiders offense does have to step up for sure, but the defense definitely got us the win. Frozen Raider says drafting Drake May or Caleb Williams and some O-line help, and this team could easily be good, but I disagree on the kick. Our kicker is pretty much automatic. And that's understandable, man. I definitely understand. Some people are going to say we should have taken the field goal at that moment. I disagree with it because I feel like, 1 yard and you're needing the football. If you don't get that yard, you're in the same spot that we ultimately got in, and Amik Robertson got the interception regardless. But I do understand the fact of drafting Drake May or Caleb Williams. At this point, I think the Raiders may already be out of the Caleb Williams stakes. I think the Panthers still haven't won any games, so The Raiders are now 2 games ahead of where the Bears are with that Panthers pick. I don't think the Panthers are going to win 2 games this year. I really don't think that. So, I think the Bears are going to end up having the first overall pick. Now, they may trade that pick. I think the Bears would be smart to trade that pick. Now, here's the one thing you guys got to think about, right? If the Bears have the number 1 overall pick, they're not going to give that pick to a good team that wants to trade up and give them, multiple first-round picks. The Bears are going to trade with the worst possible team because they're going to understand that, hey, this team's going to struggle, and this team's going to ultimately most likely have the first-round pick again next year, right? So when the Bears traded that number 1 pick away to the Panthers, they knew what they were doing. They knew that the Panthers are not a good roster. They know that the Panthers are going to have a rookie quarterback, and they're going to probably lose a lot of games. And we may end up with the number 1 overall pick again, and that's exactly what's happening right now. The Panthers are not going to win a lot of games this year. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think if the Bears do have the number 1 overall pick once again this year, which would be the Panthers pick, they may not trade it to the Raiders because they may say, hey, the Raiders are a good football team. With Caleb Williams, the Raiders, in 2 years could be a 10-win team, a 12-win team, and we may not have the 3 first-round picks that the Raiders ultimately give us to get Caleb Williams. It may not be good enough, right? So I'm not exactly sure if the Raiders will get Caleb Williams. Drake may, it's possible the Raiders lose enough games, but at this point, I'm personally not looking forward to, let's tank and let's try to be the worst possible team. I think the Raiders, the best thing they can do is try to actually be good because I think winning games builds a culture. And I think for the Raiders, you have Devontae Adams. He's a winner. He's came here. He's won. Marcus Epps was a winner, right? I think what the Raiders have to do is the players that they have in the building, these guys need to develop and have that mindset that we're winning football games, right? Because you can always trade up for a pick later on. Right, the 49ers proved it to us. You can trade up for Trey Lance whenever, and if you have this roster in place, you'll have success, right? Picks don't matter a whole lot when you have a winning culture and you're a good team. Plus, we don't know how much longer Josh McDaniels is actually going to be here. So I truly think this, in order to be a good team, in order to have a good, long-term success, the Raiders need a good head coach, right? The Mike McDaniels, the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans. Those guys are running the league right now, and I think the Raiders need to get a offensive coach in that mold. All right. Shout out to you, Frozen Raider, for the $10 donation. Carlos Mendoza said Illuminor at right guard and Munford at right tackle. Also, Tyree and Kuntz are getting a lot better. That's 100% fact. I cannot be the only person that thinks that both Tyree Wilson and Malcolm Kuntz actually look good out there. Now, Malcolm Kuntz did get hurt, and I don't think he came back in, although I could be wrong on that one. But I do agree with what you're saying with Illuminor at right guard and Munford at right tackle. I wouldn't mind it. Honestly, I think if the Raiders wanted to try that, they should go for it. I'm just not 100% sure, right? What's going to happen if Munford takes 65 snaps at right tackle against Rashawn Gary, 65 times, right? And the Packers are able to prepare for that. Or as we play the Patriots have, the Matthew Judons, the Josh Uches and those type of guys, although I think Judon's technically out for the year. But I don't know what's going to happen, right? And maybe the best thing to do is just throw Munford out there and let's just find out, right? Let's find out if he has it or not. And I wouldn't mind Jermaine Illuminor at right guard. I think Illuminor, between Munford, Illuminor, and Greg Van Roten, I trust Illuminor the most. But if it's at right guard, I think he'll be the best right guard among all those guys, right? So I think it's going to be interesting as hell for sure. I do like the fact that our pass rush is kind of getting it going as well. Legit Media said, with the rumors that the Raiders want to trade for a defensive player, would you do it the way the defense has been playing lately? That's an interesting question for sure. I think the Raiders could possibly look to go out and get a defensive tackle, but it depends what it costs. Is there a team out there that may want Hunter Renfrow? I don't know. Maybe the Eagles, right? Maybe the Eagles feel like, hey, we can utilize a Hunter Renfrow, but I just don't know. Even if it's not Hunter Renfrow, right? The Raiders said they don't want to give up picks, right? They only want to do a player for a player. In that instance, who's the player that you give up? If it's not Hunter Renfrow, which other player for the Raiders has value? Maybe Josh Jacobs, right? Outside of that, I don't even know which guy really has value for the Raiders. I don't know. And the Raiders aren't going to give up a pick because that's valuable as hell for the Raiders, right? I would definitely consider trading for a defensive player. I think the Raiders need a defensive tackle, All right, I'm not sure about defensive end. I think we should just roll forward with Tyree Wilson. All right, Tyree Wilson should get 80, 85% of snaps because that's what's going to make him better. It's what's going to let him develop. If Tyree Wilson's not playing, he'll never get better. He'll never be able to be that guy for us. So I think the Raiders should be smart with Tyree Wilson and just let him have all the snaps he needs. And then rotate Malcolm Koonce in as well, obviously, right? If Koonce is healthy, you split the snaps. If not, you let Tyree Wilson roll forward. No point of bringing in another defensive end. If you want to get a D tackle, that is completely different. I think the Raiders still have the issues where we don't have a true 3-down defensive tackle, right? All of our guys are, they're either run defenders or they're pass rushers, and they're not both, right? And ultimately, I think you got to get guys that can do both. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for sure how the Raiders kind of continue to move forward. I see a lot of people talking about Josh McDaniels and the decision to ultimately kick the field goal. Org here says, if we lost this game after the field goal attempt, McDaniels should have been fired. I'm going to definitely agree with you, man. I'm going to definitely agree with you. Trevor says, everybody in this chat know where the hat's from. Act like you know. So I see what you guys are saying. As Casper said here, the hat is from Redemption Brand. That's from Raid the Tape. Some of you guys know who he is. He's a Raiders content creator as well. He also has his brand, so go check his website out. It's Redemption Brand, as Casper has it right there. Shout out to Stephanie Bacca says left a $5 super sticker. Shout out to you for that one. I want to talk about this game a little bit more. Just kind of give you guys my thoughts and opinions. I felt like on the defensive side, we obviously had a good game, right? Max Crosby was able to get after it. When it came through defending the run, I felt like we did a pretty good job. Although A.J. Dillon was able to pick up, he was bigger, so he's harder to tackle, right? So he was able to fall forward for about a yard. So if it was a 2-yard run, he'd fall forward and pick up 3. If it was a 4-yard run, he'd fall forward and pick up 5. And I think ultimately that's very hard to stop because A.J. Dillon is 245 pounds. But I do feel like the defensive tackles have been playing a little bit better, especially against the run. I feel like in the past we've struggled to defend the run, and I feel like in the last 2 weeks we've been a little bit better to defend the run. But I feel like one of the things that's happened recently is we have given up big plays. Right, the last 2 weeks, we've given up some big plays. Christian Watson had a 77-yard catch today, and we really didn't allow that in the first 3 weeks or so, right? Even the Bills didn't have anything big against us. And to me, I feel like the Raiders got to just continue to play that style of defense where you're limiting big plays. If you limit the big plays, it makes it hard for a defense to score because you got to convert every single 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, because you're not giving up those big plays. And there may be like 4 on one drive that you have to convert. And it only takes 1 3rd and 4 for you to throw an incompletion and you have to punt the football away, right? And I think for the Raiders, as long as you limit the big plays, you'll always have a shot. And it's clear to me that the Raiders defense has been a lot better this year. Outside the Bills game, we haven't given up a whole lot of points. We've been pretty solid this season. And I think on the defense side, the Raiders are definitely getting better. I don't know what the amount of points we're giving up every single game. I don't know the actual stat for that and where it ranks, but just from the eye test, I could tell you guys that I feel like the Raiders defense is getting better. The interceptions, we have 3 today. We had 2 sacks today as well. Multiple pressures. Marcus Peters has a dropped interception. Last week, Trayvon Merrick had an actual interception. Roderick Teamer had an interception that was ultimately taken off the board. So the Raiders are forcing turnovers, and I think it's starting with the pressure that's kind of being generated up front. Now, outside of Max Crosby, we got to just continue to get better on the defensive side, on the D-line specifically, because the more pressure we're able to get after the quarterback, the more opportunities we'll have on the back end. I oftentimes state this, and I feel like people may not really think about this. You can have the best players in the secondary, but if your pass rush isn't getting home, if your pass rush isn't generating pressure, the guys will not be able to cover forever on the back end. And I feel like the Raiders are at this point where the pass rush is starting to get a little bit better. We saw Malcolm Koonce get after a little bit today. We saw even Tyree Wilson early on in the game had like a pressure or 2. And then Max Crosby obviously, does his thing. But I feel like for the Raiders to continue to have success, you have to get after the quarterback. And that's where our defense is going to live or die by, right? Is the pressure on the quarterback, because that's going to ultimately put the opposing quarterback into the position where they may have to, fit the ball into a tight spot. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for the defense as we kind of go forward. Ray Cruz says, how did the Raiders score more than 17 points in a game? It's easy, man. Honestly, the Raiders just got to stay consistent. Today, we should have had 23 points, right? We had a blocked field goal right before the half, and then we had a missed field goal at the end of the game. The Raiders should have had 23 points in this game. Now, I'm not sure if, let's just be honest. It doesn't really matter if we score 23 or if we score 17 in this game today, but our offense does have to get a little bit better. I think we got to get Trey Tucker the football. He had a carry today for 16 yards. I think he had a carry last week as well for maybe like 11 or 12 yards. And then he had another carry that went for 33 or 34 yards, like in the first or second week of the season as well. I think Trey Tucker has to get the ball more. Trey Tucker is a weapon on the offensive side. Honestly, he should be getting like 4 carries a game minimum. All right, put him in shotgun, have him line up, next to Jimmy G, maybe put it in pistol formation, have him line up in the backfield, and you give him the ball out in space. I feel like Trey Tucker is one of those guys we need to utilize more. And if it's not Trey Tucker, we got to continue to get Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams the ball. And our offensive line has to just continue to be better. I think for the Raiders to score more than 17 points, it's really up to the offensive line. If the offensive line can get it going, the Raiders will have success. And I think ultimately we can have success on the offensive line. We just got to really come together and put it together. Jimmy G was okay today, right? 22 of 31, 208 yards, a touchdown, an interception. Not great, right? Not great, but good enough just so the Raiders are able to win. But, of course, I would have loved for the Raiders to score another touchdown here or there, right? We had the opportunities. 2 interceptions only led to 3 points by the Raiders, right? That's not good enough. You got to do a better job in that aspect. I know some people want Aiden O'Connell, but I just don't think Aiden O'Connell gives the Raiders the best opportunity to win now, right? I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a veteran. He's smarter than O'Connell today, and I get it. Aiden O'Connell has a much better arm. I think all of us that watched Aiden O'Connell last week know the guy has a very good zip on the football. He can really push it in there, and he does a lot of really good things. But Aiden O'Connell is also a rookie, and when it comes to the mental aspect of things, he's going to get sacked 7 times every week, right? That happens with rookies. He's going to throw interceptions. We're seeing Jordan Love throwing multiple interceptions, and Jordan Love's like in year 4, right? But the thing is in order for these guys to develop and get better, they got to go out there and actually, play football. They got to go out there. They got to throw the interceptions. They got to learn. They got to read the coverages and do all those things in order for them to get better. And Jordan Love's in that same spot right now. And I know with Aiden O'Connell, if we wanted to tank this season, roll forward with Aiden O'Connell. That's going to allow the Raiders to tank. But I don't think that's where the Raiders are, and I don't think Mark Davis wants to tank this season. I think Mark Davis wants to win football games, as does Josh McDaniels. And I think Jimmy G gives us the best shot right now. Not saying Aiden O'Connell can't be better, of course, right? It's going to be interesting if the Raiders do ban Jimmy G at any point again, because Aiden O'Connell was actually not even active this week, right? We deactivated him. So we'll see what ends up happening. Falk, who appreciate the super chat, says, I think our defense is starting to come together as a whole. I'm proud of the improvement these past few weeks. Communication and chemistry is there now. I think that's what you meant. I don't know. You said commutation and chemistry is key. Is there now. Our defense is definitely coming together. I think that's been clear the last 2 weeks. I think the defense has been better, and I think it starts with the pass rush. Right? When the pass rush gets going, I think the Raiders secondary is very good. I truly think that. I think Patrick Graham has these guys going right now on the defensive side. Another thing, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Patrick Graham was up in the box today. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I believe this is the first time Patrick Graham has been in the box as opposed to on the sideline, at least that I've noticed. And tell me if you guys think I'm wrong on that one. But Patrick Graham being in the box does benefit him because he's able to see things from up above. He's able to call certain concepts. Of course, he needs someone down there to obviously send in guys in the key packages and those type of things. That's what the assistant guys are there for, obviously. But I love the fact that Patrick Graham is getting this guy going because I think the secondary is good. I actually thought that coming into the season that the secondary would overperform. And I think it starts with Trayvon Merrick. You got to give a big shout out to Trayvon Merrick. He's the guy that when week 1 and 2 ended, every person on social media, every big content creator, every big, news guy that covers the Raiders, they were talking shit about Trayvon Merrick. They were saying that it's time to cut this guy, release him today, get rid of his ass. And I don't know why people want the Raiders to do something like that, right? We took this guy with the second pick. Like, keep him for 8 years and see what he develops into, right? Trayvon Merrick ended up having not only a good game today, he was really good last week. He had an interception. He's been very good this season. Now, he has given up a touchdown here or there, but overall, Trayvon Merrick has been solid. He's only in year 3, so imagine where Merrick can be in like year 5 or 6 as he continues to develop, right? So I'm glad that Trayvon Merrick's having success, and I'm glad that the Raiders didn't move on from this guy after week 2 or whatever. But I'm excited, man. I think the Raiders defense will continue to have success. They're really coming together. It's going to really depend on the pass rush, and hopefully they're able to kind of get home. But the offense does have to play better, and there's no excuses for that. At the end of the day, Jimmy G has to continue to push the ball downfield. We can get into, every third down. 15 third downs in a game could be 3rd and 4s. Jimmy G may not get it done on a 3rd and 4, right? So best case is we don't get into those third down situations, right? I appreciate the super chat by all of you guys. We got the final super chat by Joe. He said, big win, one of the best defensive games we have played in years. Do you think we will trade for an edge rusher before the deadline? I'm going to say, yeah, I think the Raiders are going to trade for a pass rusher. I'm not sure exactly who that's going to be, but something tells me if the reports are out there that the Raiders are looking for a pass rusher, chances are it's a true report, right? Chances are, someone out there knows, an assistant general manager who has talked to, whoever put the report out, right? I think it was Deanna Rossini who put the report out. Chances are she knows somebody that knows that the Raiders are looking for a pass rusher. And if the Raiders are truly looking, chances are some of the Raiders players, right, are on the trade block, right? Chances are certain GMs or scouts or whoever out there may know that, hey, this Raiders player, they're looking to move him. So there's a chance the Raiders do look to possibly make a move before the trade deadline. It'll be interesting to see who the Raiders end up getting. I see some of you guys' comments saying Brian Burns as a possible target for the Raiders. I think that would be interesting as hell. If there was a Brian Burns at the defensive tackle position, I think that would be perfect. I just feel like if you're going to trade for Brian Burns, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Plus, you already have Tyree Wilson. And, you don't want 3 pass rushers the way, those 3 guys would come together then. Ultimately, if there was a defensive tackle out there that you can bring in, I think that'd be fantastic, right? Danielle Hunter's another guy. I see your guys' comments. Some people are saying Chase Young, Danielle Hunter. It's going to be interesting what the Raiders end up doing. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think the defense is getting better. The offense has to do its part. Imagine if Josh Jacobs was on pace for, 1,600 yards again this season. Like, how much better would our offense actually be? If Josh Jacobs wasn't averaging 3.5 yards per attempt, imagine if Jacobs was actually averaging like 4.9 or 5.4, right? Or imagine if the Raiders drafted, instead of Byron Young, they took Devon Achane, the rookie running back that the Miami Dolphins took. Imagine if the Raiders took that guy. Man, that kid's an absolute superstar. The Raiders got to get more explosive, I feel like, on the offensive side. And maybe that's Josh Jacobs. Maybe that's Trey Tucker. We saw Michael Mayer have 2 catches for 39 yards today. The Raiders just got to keep it up, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I see some of you guys saying, Sanjit, are you high? Are you okay? I am perfectly fine. I am as sober as it gets. But I'm tired, man. I've had a long day. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, man. Enjoy the win, man. We may not get a lot of these. So enjoy the win. The Raiders season's right back on track. We have a lot of easy games over the next 5 weeks, a lot of one-win teams. So the Raiders should be able to win a lot of these games. So hopefully the Raiders can continue to show up, and hopefully, we're 5-3 in 4 weeks from now, right? We'll see what ends up happening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to drop a comment below, and I will see you guys with another video tomorrow.